for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele, helping Darren out today.
Yes, thank you so much for volunteering to help out today. As all of you know, Jack's taking some time off from the show. I mentioned it last week. If you missed that message, go back into our archives and you can hear a little bit of the explanation. And Jack, we're thinking of you, and we hope you get back pretty soon.
Miss you, Jack.
Yes, we do. Well, one thing you're not going to miss today is all the action and fun. We've got quite a few stories to discuss here, including local media basically slandering Antifa on on local TV Thursday night. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Trump and the new book from his niece. That ought to be real interesting. Plus, we've got a lot of coronavirus stuff to talk about. Before we get into it, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. You can also find us at the iTunes Store. Do a search for Southpaws under podcasts. Once you found our logo, you found us. Links to our podcast go to our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube. If you go to youtube.com, do a search for Southpaws Radio there, and you can listen to the show in its entirety. And, of course, you can hear us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and Global Community Radio Channel 1. We're on every Saturday night at 11 p.m., so make sure you check us out there as well. Before we get into our topics today, I mentioned this on my personal Facebook. Had an interesting week. Actually, had an interesting weekend, to be more specific. My mom and her, I don't know if call him boyfriend, I call him douchebag, but that's just my 2 cents on him, decided to have a garage sale at the house, and a woman pulled up, gun toted right on her hip, just strutting around, spewing her Trump rhetoric, and, oh, the media lies about Trump, and Trump's a good guy, and, oh, you're being brainwashed by the media. And I was in the house when all this was happening, so my mom's arguing with her.
Oh, wow.
If you want to know where I get my temper from, it's my 82-year-old mother from Kentucky. So she's out there arguing with him. Her boyfriend comes in. Oh, I wish she'd stop arguing with that woman. That woman's got a gun. I thought, I better head out there. So then she starts in with the whole media and, Melania Trump, she's not Russian and all that. Well, she is Yugoslavian, is close enough. She was born in the Soviet bloc era. So this woman's just going on and on and on. My mom's boyfriend's trying to get rid of this lady, and she ain't leaving, and she's still arguing, so I chimed up.
So it's Darren versus Karen from the NRA.
Pretty much, and I didn't care if she had a gun. If she wanted to pull it, I was going to take it from her, and I was going to stick it where the sun don't shine. I'm not afraid. Sorry, I'm not.
She probably doesn't know how to use it anyway.
Yeah. Well, she was telling my mom, I saved a cop a couple of years ago. They gave me an award for this. And I'm like, that's the wrong thing to say.
Great reason to defund the GRPD.
Absolutely. It certainly is. So after some choice words with her and a lot of profanity, I finally chased her off the property. And I don't care if she comes back, because guess what? Liberals own guns too, folks, and probably know how to use them better. Just saying. Unbelievable.
Karen was just out trying to get a deal.
She was bragging about walking into the Meijer on 10 Mile Road in Rockford without a mask on.
Well, there's not long left for her anyway, so she'll take care of herself.
I hope. We can only hope. And oh, jeez. So we've already touched on two things. We've touched on defunding the Grand Rapids Police Department in this community, and for that matter, defunding all the police departments.
Yes, abolish police.
Let's get into that before we get into any of the coronavirus stuff. I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart, so I'm going to let you take the floor here.
So, yeah, I absolutely am a fierce advocate for abolishing police. And these media stories that have come out over the past couple of months since the riots have been an excellent example of why, because it's not just police, it's part of a larger system of oppression that oppresses not just black and brown people, but also poor people, and anybody that needs protection, which is the absolute opposite of what we are told they're there for and what we're paying them for. So I don't know if everybody didn't see the news story from Wood TV 8. I don't suggest watching it because it's trash.
Yeah, I called it hot garbage.
Oh, that's an excellent term for it. It's as far from the truth as you can really get, and they're just trying to sensationalize everyday people who are out trying, to stand up for the right for black people just to live, just to survive, and to paint them as the terrorists is what's happening here. They're using our money and all of our resources to do it. So it's really scary.
Yeah, it certainly is. And our friend Jeff Smith, who's been on the show in the past, has a great article that he wrote. I believe he published it this morning.
He did. It's on grid.com.
At Grid. So that's the Grand Rapids Institute for Information Democracy. That's GRIID.org. Folks, this is where you want to get some information. Yeah, this was published July 10th. I'm going to read bits and pieces of it here. Wood TV 8 has done it again, broadcasting stories that are sensationalist and full of misinformation. On Monday, we posted a deconstruction of a Wood TV 8 story that essentially provided a white supremacist group with free airtime. Yeah, it was one of the militia groups, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the one with, Bill something, I want to say was the name of the guy that ran it, but he was one of the militia guys that had been causing issues in Allendale and...
Yeah, and I don't remember his name either. The Michigan Liberty Militia was the group. And they showed footage of them shooting guns and all of that. It's
and they made them look like some sort of heroes. It's really crazy that this is the world we're living in right now.
Phil Robinson, okay.
That's what I thought it was.
Cuckoo, Phil Roberts.
Yeah, those guys are... They're difficult to, I guess, frame correctly in public opinion because of the way that they enter situations. Generally, they come in and they pretend as if they're just there to diffuse the situation, just to help everybody.
Yeah.
But ultimately, just the appearance of them there, scares everyone and intimidates everyone. And the fact that the police support them while working against everybody else at these events it's disgusting. Yeah.
Michigan Liberty Militia, the Oath Keepers, just the 3%ers, basically, is what they are. I'm going to continue with Jeff's story here. Last night, which would have been Thursday night, July 9th, Wood TV 8 once again engaged in shoddy journalism that was meant as clickbait, but failed to actually inform the public. The first story was framed as Riots Revealed, Follow the Money, a Target 8 investigative story which investigates nothing. The story begins with the newsreader saying that a month after rioting in Grand Rapids, suspicion lingers, and then states that the news station found out that a group was bailing out those charged with rioting. This supposed investigative story wants viewers to believe that they uncovered who bailed out people charged with rioting, when in fact, the Michigan Solidarity Bail Fund has been very public on social media for more than a month. Grid even posted a story on the Michigan Solidarity Bail Fund on June 2nd, primarily because Grid supports the recent uprising and those who have participated in the uprising, which includes bailing people out of jail. Now, let me just stop there and add that Southpaws also agrees with the uprising and the bailing of those people out.
As does Katy Steele as an individual. Mm-hmm. And most of the people that I am friends with, because this is fascism. This is not public safety. It's fascism.
That's correct. Wood TV8 reporter Susan Samples begins her expose by talking about how a few keystrokes can create a conspiracy or reveal truths. In one of the images used in the video B-roll, you can see the name Andy Go, and on the Wood TV post about this story, it shows that the Channel 8 reporter was relying on Andy Go for information about someone the news station believes is behind the bail fund. The thing is, Andy Go is a fascist, a supporter of the Proud Boys and other far-right groups. Plus, he has made it his mission to promote misinformation about Antifa. This claim is supported by numerous independent news sources, including Jacobin Magazine, Rolling Stone, and Media Matters, which is 3 sources that we use real frequently on this show. The Channel 8 story then spends the rest of the time trying to get information on a person that was outed by Andy Go, and then seeks to frame the rest of the story as if Wood TV is really trying to get to the bottom of something. They aren't. Instead, whether intentional or not, my opinion is that it is intentional, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Wood TV8 has demonized a human being just because they believe in bailing out people who were arrested during the May 30th uprising in Grand Rapids. In fact, Wood TV8 provides far-right groups and state forces, cops, prosecutors, etc., with information that will do nothing other than cause harm to people who are deeply committed to anti-racism and anti-fascist organizing. Now, I said that it was my opinion that it's intentional, and I tell you why. Sorry, I used to work at Wood TV. I kind of know some of the inner workings. When I was there in 89, 90, 91, one of the asses that got kissed the most down at that station, Pete Secchia. Saw it with my own eyes. You can't say anything to Pete. You got to treat him nice because he's an important public figure. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much a direct quote that I got from the news anchor that did the mornings at that time.
Which he was famous ultimately for being a rich Republican donor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why he was such a big name, because he just had money that he gave to the Republican Party.
That money bought him the ambassadorship to Italy.
Italy, right. Which, and got his name on a whole lot of buildings in town. But, I mean, he also founded Universal Forest Products, which is his main cash cow, which is now Universal Forest Product Technologies over by the airport, which has me a little bit concerned, because what are they doing over there?
Yeah.
Is that defense stuff? Like, what are they making?
Yeah. I don't know if you can make defense stuff out of wood, but, you know,
they'll
use it as a they'll use a cover-up for it, you know.
That's what they got to call it.
Let's make it sound good, right? Yeah. The other butts that they love to kiss over at Wood TV are the DeVos family, and we talked about that before we started recording today. Eric Prince, Betsy DeVos, Dick DeVos, the whole family, pretty much.
Sherry, Doug, everybody.
Dan.
Everybody. Oh, yeah, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah. We can't forget about Dan. No. All right, let me continue here real quick. In the follow-up story, Wood TV8 then does a story on Antifa and talks to someone from Saginaw claiming that they are part of Antifa. The story that aired last night begins with anti-Antifa propaganda, including Trump denouncing the group. Yeah, let's just take our cues from the orange dictator, right? This sets the tone for the whole story, which has little to do with illuminating information on the anti-fascist movement. This sensationalized story is really about trying to frame Antifa as an extremist group instead of digging into its history, which has been explored by people like Mark Bray, author of the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. However, Wood TV8 prefers sensationalism since the news stations is driven by ratings and understands that its primary viewing demographic are white, middle-class people.
This is true.
Yep.
Kids these days don't even have TVs. They're not sitting around watching Wood TV8.
Yep. Yeah, let me just tell you, folks, the people at Wood TV on the third floor up in the sales office knows just exactly who they're selling to and who's buying it.
Yep.
And if you don't think that information gets filtered down to the news department, you better think again. It used to not be.
Is Wood TV8 owned by Sinclair Broadcasting now?
No, they are owned by Nexstar.
Nexstar, okay.
Yeah, Nexstar was a merger of Lynn Broadcasting, and I forget who else was involved in
I'll look into that later.
General Media.
General Media. Okay.
Yeah. No, in this market, Sinclair owns WWMT.
Okay.
Channel 3. Tegna owns WZZM. WXMI Fox 17 is now owned by Scripps.
Oh,
They had to sell Scripps when Nexstar bought up Tribune Media, which was the parent company of Fox 17.
Oh, okay.
So it's all just a big pot, and you just swirl it, and it just all just mixes together.
Oh, yeah, because all the people that, run the stations there, too, are on the boards with all of the big execs in town. So it's it's all very convoluted.
Oh, absolutely. Let me continue. During this expose on Antifa, Channel 8 actually uses commentary from Ryan Kelly, a white supremacist with the American Patriot Rally, who has organized numerous anti-lockdown protests in Lansing, one in Grand Rapids, and brought heavily armed white guys to Allendale to intimidate people who were protesting the Civil War monument. And by the way, Jack Prince was at the Allendale rally that Saturday. So, and we haven't had a chance to have him back on to talk about that, but maybe we'll do that when he returns to the show.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah. In the rest of the Channel 8 story, the reporter seeks to sensationalize Antifa as extremist, even using the FBI as a source about Antifa.
That's a solid source.
Yeah. Even after the Grand Rapids police, and I believe she talked to the prosecutor, said, we've been hearing these rumors, but we don't have any proof.
Right, yeah. Chris Becker said that in the article, I think Jeff said, right? Mm-hmm. That they didn't have proof of Antifa.
Yep. The questions asked by the reporter of the person claiming to be part of Antifa are leading and ridiculous, always using words like extremist and violence, along with video B-roll of property destruction. Boy, it sounds like a Trump commercial to me, doesn't it? The new one that's on the air?
Yeah, and I gotta say this, because this narrative of repeating over and over and over that property damage is violence is making me crazy. Property damage is not violence. Violence is hurting a human being, injuring a human being. And so far at those riots, the only injuries being inflicted on human beings are inflicted by the police. So I just have to lay that out there for y'all. When people start telling you about violence and rioters, remember who's being violent here. It's not people that broke a window. When it's in retaliation for when you're trying to survive, then property damage is just collateral damage. It is not violence.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the violence, I don't think we mentioned it on this show, but the Grand Rapids police officer that was caught on video shooting a tear gas canister in a protester's face, no charges.
None at all. Apparently, he was just stopping a riot.
Ridiculous. I am just going to stop there because I'm getting angrier by the second. But, yeah, this is how... Like I said, the lady that stopped at our garage sale, or my mom's garage sale, you can't believe everything in the mainstream media. Well, to a degree, she's got a little bit of a point there.
Absolutely. The problem is so many of those Karens cherry pick what they want to believe just because it goes with their narrative, and then they turn around and go, you can't believe everything.
Oh, by the way, she also made the claim that Sean Hannity triple checks everything before it goes to the air.
I'm sure he does.
3 different sources.
Read, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, this is what we're up against, folks. We're up against the powers that be, and then they got the media in their back pocket, like Carlin said,
Yeah, you can't like, I guess, beat a fool with logic. Logic isn't a thing they use, so.
No, I'm afraid not. Oh boy. Speaking of fools and a lack of logic, I have this story. This is Stephen Groves writing for the Associated Press. This is dated July 6th, out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Shortly after fireworks above Mount Rushmore disappeared into the night sky on Friday, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem accompanied Donald Trump aboard Air Force One, despite having had close contact with Trump's son's girlfriend, who had tested positive for the coronavirus.
Brilliant.
Trump has been in a position all along to encounter a virus that spreads from people who don't feel sick, such as Noem, who had interacted closely at a campaign fundraiser with Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who turned out to be infected. Noem didn't wear a mask on the plane and chatted with Trump as the flight returned to Washington, D.C., according to her spokesperson, Maggie Seidel. Noem had tested negative for COVID-19 shortly before welcoming Trump to South Dakota on Friday, a day after she had interacted with Guilfoyle. One photo on social media showed Noem and Guilfoyle, who is also a Trump campaign staff member, hugging. Yeah, Just spread that virus around, folks.
Oh, my. Why wouldn't you just go home? Why wouldn't you just go home and stay there?
Because things have to go boom and make noise and lights and...
Oh, it's making noise, I tell you what.
Fireworks are as American as apple pie and Chevrolet, I guess.
They do sound a lot like bombs, which is as American as you get, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, go back to our national anthem. We were hailing those bombs back then. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. The amount of stupidity that comes from the Trump administration is astounding.
Well, and how effective it is at dividing us. Like, that's the part that really it's mind-blowing to me. It's so effective. And I've got family members of mine that are putting stuff online, like pictures of somebody getting arrested protesting and going, oh, share this picture everywhere. Let them show everybody getting this person arrested. And it's like these little things that, like, that person was getting arrested for protesting, but you're turning it into it being now they're a criminal, and everybody sees things so different, and it's because of this orange freaking Cheeto. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what's happening with Trump as far as his interaction in South Dakota, which, by the way, just to let everybody know that Mount Rushmore was stolen from Native Americans.
All of this
and vandalized by us.
Stolen from Native Americans, yep.
Although, there was a story that appeared last night, real late before I went to bed. There's a Supreme Court decision that came out on Thursday that apparently, according to the Supreme Court, half of Oklahoma is still considered native land because Congress didn't properly cede authority.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder how they're going to handle that.
Including Tulsa, which should be real interesting.
That's going to be, yeah, that's very interesting. And I wonder how it would end up affecting Michigan if any of those things are similar with how they did that, because so many, there was so much land here that was used to be theirs.
Yeah, the case came out. It was somebody was arrested, and they said, you can't arrest me because you don't have the authority to do so. This is Indian land. That's their purview to arrest me, not the state's.
Nice. So that could be real confusing then.
Oh, man. I really hate using the New York Times as a reference here, but I'll do it in this case. This is Jack Healy and Adam Liptak. This was published on July 9th on Thursday. The Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that much of eastern Oklahoma falls within an Indian reservation, a decision that could reshape the criminal justice system by preventing state authorities from prosecuting offenses there that involve Native Americans. The 5-4 decision, potentially one of the most consequential legal victories for Native Americans in decades, could have far-reaching implications for the people who live across what the court affirmed was Indian country. The lands include much of Tulsa, Oklahoma's second biggest city. The case was steeped in the United States government's long history of brutal removals and broken treaties with indigenous tribes, and grappled with whether lands of the Muskogee Creek Nation had remained a reservation after Oklahoma became a state. Again, this was because somebody got arrested and said, you can't arrest me. And he took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won in a 5-4 decision.
Wow.
Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion for this 5-4 ruling.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, these Supreme Court decisions are getting real weird too. Just everything I wouldn't expect from this court. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm skipping down a little bit further in the article here. Again, this is the New York Times. Justice Neil M. Gorsuch, a Westerner who has sided with tribes in previous cases and joined the court's more liberal members to form the majority, said that Congress had granted the Creek a reservation and that the United States needed to abide by its promises. In the majority opinion, Justice Gorsuch wrote, quote, "Today we are asked whether the land these treaties promised remains an Indian reservation for purposes of federal criminal law. Because Congress has not said otherwise, we hold the government to its word." End of quote. This is great.
But does that mean that he's going to allow them to modify that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that means he's going to allow them to say otherwise now.
That'll be the next thing. Congress will pass a law that says, oh, that land... I certainly hope that the Democrats in the House have enough brains to stop this.
I mean, we can't count on the Democrats in the House having enough brains
That's
to do anything.
True. We know what'll happen in the Senate because you've got Mitch McConnell there. He'll ram it through. It's crazy. It's too early to do my Mitch McConnell
impersonation.
Oh my God. Yeah, my mom loves it. She thinks it's funny as hell. That's the latest there, so that's real surprising. Let's go on to some more stories. Actually, I want to go back to a little more coronavirus stuff. I've got this. This is Maureen Groppi writing for USA Today. This was published on Wednesday. Out of Washington, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is revising its guidance on reopening schools after Donald Trump tweeted his disagreement with them. That's according to Vice President Mike Pence.
What?
We don't agree with the rules, so the CDC says, we need to keep our jobs. Yeah.
Okay, that's not scary at all, folks.
Yeah.
I saw a meme this morning that said, don't take quarantine advice from people who will send your kids to get killed in a school shooting.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's probably a logical piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. Again, logic doesn't really work with conservatives. So.
It doesn't seem to work much with capitalism lately either.
No, it doesn't. Continuing, Pence at a news conference at the U.S. Department of Education said, they say the president, I don't use the word president with Donald Trump. That's a policy on this show. We don't refer to him as that because he's the dictator. Well, Trump said today, we just don't want the guidance to be tough. Quote, that's the reason why next week CDC is going to be issuing a new set of tools, 5 different documents that will be giving even more clarity on the guidance going forward, end of quote. Yeah, Trump threatened to pull federal funding for schools that don't open in the fall for in-person classes. Let me just tell you, folks, Trump does not have the ability to do that. Congress controls the purse strings. That is in the Constitution. It's set in stone. It's in the articles.
I'm a little worried about the future of this thing you call the Constitution.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to be abiding by it lately.
No, unfortunately not. Trump tweeted on Wednesday this, quote, they're asking schools to do very impractical things. I will be meeting with them, end of quote.
Oh, no.
Gross.
Don't let him in. Nobody let him in.
Yeah. Asked about the threat to withhold funding from schools, Pence said that the administration wants to include, quote, incentives for states to go forward, end of quote, in the next federal stimulus package. And they have a photo here from Alex Wong at Getty of Pence speaking at the podium, and right over his right shoulder is Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, who is also pushing for schools to reopen in the fall for in-person classes. It's disgusting. The rich want to kill your children, folks.
And you.
Pretty much. I believe there was a story this morning on NBC News that I believe is now Florida is saying that most of the COVID deaths that they're experiencing there are people under the age of 60.
Oh, yeah. I keep hearing that the ages are dropping, which was also the case with the Spanish flu. It ended up that profiles of the infected people changed as it mutated.
And just like the Spanish flu in 1918 through 1920, there were people that were anti-mask back then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When they finally wrapped that up, like the way that the Spanish flu ended here in Grand Rapids was they placated people's house if they were infected. And so there were signs all over outside, and those people weren't allowed to leave or they were arrested.
Yep.
And it was weeks of that where you were locked down inside your house, and if you were infected, they put signs on the outside. Everybody knew who you were, and if you walked outside, you went straight to jail.
Yeah. Do you see that happening possibly?
I am more concerned about something on a much larger scale federally. And I think that right now, if you pay attention to what's happening on expressways and in the manufacturing facilities, anywhere you look, I feel like before Trump is done, when the dictator loses his reelection, which I expect will happen, he will also lose his mind a little bit because of his narcissism. And I expect that he is going to try to put a federal lockdown in place. And that's just me being logical, looking at what's happening, following the money, and knowing how a narcissist works.
Mm-hmm.
Not even fear-based, but yeah, just logic.
Well, and I've had people argue that, the Secret Service will just take him out and throw him out of the White House.
No, the Secret Service is working for him. And the problem here is that the people supporting Trump, the oligarchs supporting Trump, own private militaries that have more arsenal than our military. Mm-hmm. They could overtake the U.S. military. And if they're on Trump's team, then I don't think any of us should feel safe.
Yeah. There goes my argument of, the military will take him out. Well, I guess that's not going to happen either.
Keep in mind, while we're down here fighting about patriotism, how patriotic do you think these oligarchs are to their own countries? When you have $1 billion estate on every country in the world, which one is really home to you? Does patriotism matter, or are you more aligned with your powerful friends?
Your patriotism is to the almighty dollar.
Exactly.
And that's something that rich people have in common. They don't collude. Yes, they do collude.
Yep. And we all forget about it because we all assume they're going to be patriotic to their own countries. We don't realize that that's not the case anymore. That's not the world we live in.
No. Unfortunately not. I want to go ahead and continue to talk a little bit more about the coronavirus. Claudia Morell writes this for National Public Radio from July 3rd. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is ordering anyone returning from states where coronavirus cases are surging to quarantine for 2 weeks. The mayor announced the quarantine in a tweet late Thursday afternoon of last week. The policy started on Monday, July 6th at 12:01 a.m. So anybody visiting Chicago, if you're in a state where coronavirus cases are on the rise, expect to quarantine for 14 days, or you might get up to $7,000 in fines.
Or don't visit there and just stay home.
That's better. That we would appreciate that. I'm sure the people of Chicago would appreciate that as well. And they're not the only ones. Mm-hmm. I believe it's New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut have now added, I think they're up to like 18 states, and it might even be more than that.
Yeah, I would imagine there are. I know that people out in Colorado, Montana are getting really upset that everybody wants to come out there now because that's like a safe place because the population is so spread out. But now it's not as safe because everybody's going there.
Yeah, and the same thing happening in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
There was a story, it was actually during Governor Gretchen Whitmer's press conference yesterday. They had mentioned that they are starting to see a sharp rise in coronavirus positive cases in the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, no.
And it's because everybody's traveling up there. Oh, they're corona-free up there. Let's bring our disease up there. Let's get away from the coronavirus. Well, you're not. You're taking your disease with you and making those people sick. And there's some real serious stuff here. I have this story from Ian Sample. He's the science editor at The Guardian. Let me read this story here. This was dated July 8th. Doctors may be missing signs of serious and potentially fatal brain disorders triggered by coronavirus as they emerge in mildly affected or recovering patients, scientists have warned. Neurologists Wednesday published details of more than 40 UK COVID-19 patients whose complications ranged from brain inflammation and delirium to nerve damage and stroke. In some cases, the neurological problem was the patient's first and main symptom. The cases, published in the journal Brain, revealed a rise in a life-threatening condition called acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, or ADEM, as the first wave of infections swept through Britain. At UCL's Institute of Neurology, ADEM cases rose from 1 a month before the pandemic to 2 or 3 per week in April and May. One woman who was 59 years old died of the complication. I'm going to stop there because I actually know somebody that has survived acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, and you listeners do too. Those of you that have been longtime listeners remember guest co-host Katy J. Katy J suffered this her senior year of college.
Scary.
And had a brain bleed on top of it. Damn near died.
That's really scary.
So she was actually the one that put me onto this story here. And Katy, if you're listening, thank you for publishing this story here, or at least sharing it on your Facebook.
That was in Great Britain, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
12 patients had inflammation of the central nervous system. 10 had brain disease with delirium or psychosis. 8 had strokes. A further 8 had peripheral nerve problems, mostly diagnosed as Guillain-Barré syndrome, an immune reaction that attacks the nerves and causes paralysis. It's fatal in 5% of cases. And I'll stop there for a minute. Somebody that I went to high school with, later on in life, had Guillain-Barré syndrome. She was at work one day, and all of a sudden, she just dropped to the floor like everything was jelly. She couldn't move. She couldn't function.
Oh, my gosh. Does that paralyze lungs and stuff, or just the outside body limbs?
It will eventually. She
shut down everything.
Yeah, she actually died of, I'm assuming, this. Just stopped breathing in her home one Sunday morning. Yeah, it's really bad. We actually talked on Facebook Messenger about it. We reconnected a few months before she had passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like I said, that was back, God, that was 2006. 2016 was a horrible year. Let me just tell you.
You are not wrong.
Between friends dying and Trump and
the dictator,
everything else. Michael Zandi, a senior author on the study and a consultant at the Institute and a University College London Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, said this. Quote, "We're seeing things in the way COVID-19 affects the brain that we haven't seen before with other viruses. What we've seen with some of these ADAM patients and in other patients is you can have severe neurology. You can be quite sick, but actually have trivial lung disease. Biologically, ADAM has some similarities with multiple sclerosis, but it is more severe and usually happens as a one-off. Some patients are left with long-term disability, like my friend. Others can make a good recovery." End of quote. The case has added to concerns over the long-term health effects of COVID-19, which have left some patients breathless and fatigued long after they have cleared the virus, and others with numbness, weakness, and memory problems. One patient described in the paper, a 55-year-old woman with no history of psychiatric illness, began to behave oddly the day after she was discharged from the hospital. She repeatedly put her coat on and took it off again and began to hallucinate, reporting that she saw monkeys and lions in her house. She was readmitted to the hospital and gradually improved on antipsychotic medication. This is from the coronavirus. And yet there's still people that think it's a hoax.
Yeah. Well, unless they've, worked in a hospital or know somebody who has. That's the line of people who are willing to cherry pick facts and people who have to face the reality as if you've got somebody on the front lines.
Mm-hmm. Another woman, aged 47, was admitted to the hospital with a headache and numbness in her right hand a week after a cough and fever came on. She later became drowsy and unresponsive and required an emergency operation to remove part of her skull to relieve pressure on her swollen brain.
Wow.
Well, there was the case in Detroit early on. The 6-year-old got encephalitis from the coronavirus and died of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Zandi continued, quote, "We want clinicians around the world to be alert to these complications of coronavirus." End of quote. He urged physicians and healthcare workers with patients with cognitive symptoms, memory problems, fatigue, numbness, or weakness to discuss the case with neurologists. He added this, quote, "The message is not to put that all down to the recovery and the psychological aspects of recovery. The brain does appear to be involved in this illness." End of quote. Oh. That's some scary stuff right there.
Yeah, it seems it just keeps getting worse, huh?
Yeah, and everybody keeps saying, well, it's not as bad as it was when this first started. Well, it's because the doctors have finally started to figure out how this stuff works and what it affects.
Exactly, and that's, but they keep putting out so much misinformation. I'll read stuff from doctors that says, okay, we can't build herd immunity because we don't know that people are becoming immune and building antibodies. But then I hear 20 minutes later that nobody's ever caught it twice. So I don't.
Which is not true. There's a guy in Grand Rapids, 104-year-old World War II veteran, caught it twice.
Are they sure? Because supposedly in the beginning they were saying that they were having false positives.
Well, he was in the hospital for a while. The first time he got better, went home, and within, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks, he was back in the hospital.
See, and that might be the same bout of it, because I've heard it lasts for months. A lot of people are dealing with these symptoms for months. So
yes.
But that confuses me, because supposedly your body's supposed to build up immunity for at least a short amount of time.
There's a commentator with World Wrestling Entertainment. She's got it twice. Kayla Braxton. She had it in March. She just got it again in June.
See, now that seems more plausible as being a second infection, because it's so many months apart, I think. And that's what I've been worried about and scared of, because if you can keep getting it over and over and over, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially if it keeps mutating like this and getting worse. I can't imagine how it will get better.
Yeah, because before they thought, it's a lung disease. Well, then they discovered what's happening is it's apparently causing inflammation in the blood vessels that go into your lungs, causing blood clots.
Yeah, and even asymptomatic people are being found to have serious lung damage. Mm-hmm. Asymptomatic. You didn't even know you had it, and it's causing serious lung damage.
Yep. And it certainly is. That's the scary part about this whole disease, is we still don't know
anything.
A lot about it. We know very little.
Our whole medical system, CDC, everything like that is so taken over by big money. You don't know what to believe, even when they tell you.
and then we pull out of the World Health Organization, or Trump pulls the country out of it.
Well, and you've got everybody going, is the World Health Organization good? Is the CDC good? Or any of these things, can we trust anyone? And that's when it's just like, wow.
Yeah, that's the thing with medicine and science. Things will change when they discover something else. The recommendations are going to be different. Remember when this all started, don't wear a mask. A mask isn't going to do you any good. And within a month, well, you need to wear a mask. That'll protect you.
And I always felt like they were telling us not to worry about it because we didn't have them. Nobody could get them. Mm-hmm. So I felt like a lot of that was don't let people will freak out if they realize they need them and they're not even anywhere.
Well, people did freak out.
Yeah.
We saw a run on masks. We saw a run on Clorox wipes or
I still haven't been able to get Lysol or Clorox wipes.
Really?
Yeah, you can't get it anywhere.
I'm able to find it every week.
Really? We'll talk about that later. We don't want to tell everyone.
Yes, exactly. You'll have to take a little drive up north, but I can
am so okay
with
that.
Toilet paper, paper towel, same thing.
Yeah.
Well, we had talked before we started recording. You couldn't find coffee filters.
Yep. Yeah, and I knew why. It was because people are using them for masks. But if you didn't know that, you're kind of like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, everybody just had a run on coffee. But I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. The people went nuts. I mean, you can't blame them.
Right.
You know, we're a society that panics over the least little thing. And I remember when September 11th happened, the price of gas shot up from $1.99 up to $4 a gallon.
Because they literally had us all. Remember, I lined up for gas that day. I have no idea why. I was, 19 years old, and I saw that happen, and then everybody just said, you guys have to go get gas. And I was like, okay. And I went and waited forever and paid way too much money, and then I never did figure out why we all thought we needed to go get gas.
Yeah, it's just people panic, and
group mentality will overtake when you get scared crowds. And
it is. And actually, I haven't had a chance to play this song yet. Can I play this? This runs about a minute. This is Tom McGovern. Published this to Facebook. This is a good little song. You'll get a kick out of it. I'm definitely going to have to edit it after the fact. So here you go, folks.
Hey, everybody, got a favor to ask. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Save a human life with a menial task. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Look at their numbers. Look at our numbers. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask.
And they want to throw God's wonderful breathing system out the door.
Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. If you say they're killing people, then you're dead, dead wrong. I really shouldn't even have to write this song. If you trust Trump, you can kiss my ass. And shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Shut the f*** up and put on your mask. Save a human life with a menial task. Just shut the f*** up and put on your mask.
Oh, yeah. Right there, Tom McGovern. Beautiful.
Catchy little tune.
He ran some audio, well, it was a video clip of that meeting down in Palm Beach County, Florida, where the one lady got up there and said, the reason I don't wear a mask is the same reason I don't wear panties. Things need to breathe.
Oh, gosh.
That's a dead-ass quote right there.
I didn't even see that.
Oh, my God. Well, speaking of Florida, this is a story. This is Travis Getty's writing for Raw Story. And, again, not a fan of them because they're kind of in the tank for corporate.
Yeah.
But this story was published on July 6th. Listen to how crazy the people are on the right. A Florida mother allegedly took her high-risk teenage daughter to a youth group event at their church, tried treating the girl at home with unproven drugs when she got sick, and then hailed her as a patriot after she died. Carson Davis died June 23rd, 2 days after her 17th birthday, after she contracted the coronavirus. Former Florida data scientist Rebecca Jones detailed shocking claims in a medical examiner's report about her illness. So, just to do a little summary here, on June 10th, the church that this girl's mother attends had a sponsored event. The church sponsored this. Bring your kids, we'll get them all infected with the coronavirus for herd immunity.
Oh, my.
Yeah, well, that was on June 10th. At least 100 children, over 100 children, not wearing masks, attended this event. Well, this 17-year-old girl has an immunocompromised system. She beat cancer at the age of 2.
Wow.
So she was taken to this event, became afflicted with coronavirus.
Purposely infected with coronavirus, and then killed.
Yep.
And that makes her a patriot.
The mother, Carol Brunton Davis, gave her daughter azithromycin, an antibacterial drug with no known benefits for fighting COVID-19, after she developed headaches, sinus pressure, and a cough. So then, Davis, whose Facebook page is awash in QAnon conspiracy theories, anti-vaccine and coronavirus misinformation, and dubious legal theories, next put the girl on her grandfather's oxygen machine after she looked gray on June 19th. She then allegedly gave the girl hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug touted by Donald Trump despite evidence of deadly side effects. Her condition worsened. The mom finally took the daughter to the hospital. She was admitted to the pediatric intensive care unit. They wanted to intubate her. Mom said no. Then finally relented, but by then it was too late.
Was she charged, though?
No.
Of course not. But, if she were a minority and something had naturally happened to her child, they'd be investigating and attempting to charge.
Mm-hmm. The hospital started plasma therapy on June 20th and 21st, Jones reported, but Carson's cardiorespiratory system was too seriously damaged and she died days later.
Poor baby.
After her daughter's death, Davis told the news press, quote, "We are incredibly saddened by her passing at this young age, but are comforted that she is pain-free," end of quote.
Puke.
She told the newspaper her daughter was a patriotic Christian who was involved with Operation Christmas Child and organized Christmas card writing for $10,000 for the troops. Davis added, quote, "Though she never wanted anything for herself, she was always making or buying gifts for others," end of quote. This woman should be charged with murder, child abuse.
Yeah, everything. All of the above.
Throw
Torture.
it all at her. Yeah.
Come on, man.
It's disgusting. Speaking of disgusting, I want to get to this. This is Martha Belisle, Brady McCombs writing for the Associated Press. This is dated July 5th. I think there was an update. Weren't there some arrests made in this? I'll get to the story. This is Seattle. One person was killed Saturday when a man who drove his car onto a closed Seattle freeway and into a crowd protesting police brutality was remembered Sunday as someone who was dedicated to the cause. The other person hit in the incident, meanwhile, remained in serious condition at a Seattle hospital. The deceased, 24-year-old Summer Taylor, spent the last 6 weeks, quote, tirelessly standing up for others while working full-time and supporting everyone around them, end of quote. That was a quote from Urban Animal on Instagram. That's the veterinarian clinic where she worked in Portland, Oregon. Taylor, who the Post said used they and them pronouns, was, quote, a positive force of nature and brought joy, the Post said. Quote, anyone that works for Urban Animal will tell you the Summer Taylor's laugh makes any bad day better, end of quote.
Yeah, it looks like they did arrest and charge the guy with vehicular homicide, vehicular assault, and reckless driving.
You think he'll walk?
I don't think he'll walk. He'll do some time, but it could be in something like a Salvation Army facility. It could be time outside of a actual prison or jail. And it depends on the judge, and I guess a lot of current events between now and when he ends up standing in front of the judge, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Speaking of judges, did you see Michael Cohen is back in federal custody?
I didn't.
Apparently violated terms of his house arrest.
Already?
Wow,
that didn't take long. The fact that they actually violated him is shocking to me.
Here's the thing, and a lot of people have said this on Facebook, and they make a great point. They released Michael Cohen for fears of him getting coronavirus.
Right.
They get Ghislaine Maxwell and put her in jail, in the same jail that apparently Epstein was in, and now she's under 14-day quarantine. Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, it'll take probably another day or so before she's dead, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, they'll wait till the weekend to find her with a bedsheet tied around her neck.
It'll come out with the Friday night news trash. News dump.
Yeah, and speaking of the Jeffrey Epstein case, I have this story. This is Jeffrey Martin writing for Newsweek. This is Newsweek reporting this. They're not a liberal magazine whatsoever. Attorneys for Virginia Giuffre, who publicly accused Jeffrey Epstein of sex trafficking, must destroy files they obtained on Epstein after a Wednesday ruling by a federal judge. Epstein was arrested in July 2019 on charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking. Allegedly, Epstein procured women to have sexual relations with high-profile individuals such as Prince Andrew. Now, let me change the phrasing on that. He didn't procure women; he procured teenaged girls,
children.
Yes, they're teenagers.
Yep, they're not sex workers. They're not any of that. They are victims, teenagers.
Exactly. Information about Epstein culled from a 2015 civil suit filed against him by Giuffre allegedly contained the names of individuals with whom Epstein had conducted business. Senior U.S. District Judge Loretta Preska ruled Wednesday that Giuffre's lawyers had come into possession of the documents improperly, noting that the protective order could only be enforced during the civil lawsuit proceedings, which had already been settled. Preska wrote that all the materials in the files shall be destroyed. Then she also requested proof that the documentation had been destroyed, saying this in the ruling, quote, counsel shall submit an affidavit detailing the steps taken to do so, end of quote. Yeah, Preska's ruling came after a request by attorney Alan Dershowitz to gain access to the documents. Gee, surprise there. Who's Dershowitz friends with? Epstein
and
Donald
Ghislaine
Trump.
And Donald Trump.
Yep, Dershowitz defended Epstein during his 2019 trial. Giuffre had claimed that Dershowitz was one of the men Epstein forced her to have sex with. Mm-hmm. In response, Dershowitz sued her for defamation in 2019. Dershowitz claimed that obtaining the Epstein files would be an asset to his defense. Preska said in a ruling that Dershowitz's desire to see all the files, quote, with over 1,000 docket entries, end of quote, was not a targeted strike but a carpet bombing. Newsweek reached out to Dershowitz for comment, and he did not respond. So there we go there. So, yeah, let's just continue the cover-up of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm not completely convinced that he's even gone. I feel like they have the power to where they could both fake their deaths and just go.
You think he's somewhere with?
I mean, I haven't looked into it. I don't have any reason to think that other than just the fact that they had exit plans. You know what I mean? They had exit plans. They knew people were looking for them. And when you have that kind of power.
That's true. Speaking of child molesters, We'll get to this story. This is from KING Television. This is the NBC affiliate in Seattle. Did you hear about Mary Kay Letourneau? She passed away earlier this week.
Oh, okay.
Yep. She received national infamy after raping one of her students and then later marrying him.
The little kid, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
She was 58 years old. She had died of stage 4 cancer, according to her attorney, David Gerke. Back in 1996, Letourneau was a 6th grade teacher at Shorewood Elementary in Burien. She was caught having sexual relations with Vili Fualau, who was her student. Fualau was 12 years old at the time. Letourneau was 34. Oh. Wasn't sexual relations, folks. It was rape.
Yeah, that's called rape. There's no other word for it.
She pled guilty in 1997. While she was in jail, she gave birth to their daughter. They got married in 2005, just after she was released from a 7-year prison sentence. Fualau had turned 22 when they got married. He filed for separation in 2017. The divorce was just finalized last year.
I was wondering if that had happened. I had a feeling it would.
Yeah. Some little-known facts about Mary Kay Letourneau. Her dad was a former U.S. representative.
Ah, I did not know that.
The family has lots of ties to Republicans. She had one family member that worked for the George H.W. Bush administration.
Oh, wow.
Another family member worked for the George W. Bush administration.
They must be really impressed with this story, then,
Her brother, Joe, currently works for Donald Trump.
Her brother works for Donald Trump. Oh,
Yep.
wow. Oh, wow.
Yep.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yep. Just disgusting behavior. And people wonder, oh, you give the Republicans a hard time. Well, they deserve it.
I mean, come on. They're the bottom of the barrel. I mean, that's literally the bottom of the barrel of humanity. We can't go easy on that.
Yeah, I mean, we give the Democrats a hard time, too.
Oh, yes, we do. They're just above the bottom of the barrel, but barely.
But barely? Yeah, exactly. There's pond scum, and then there's just whatever's on top of the pond scum. There you go. That pretty much describes it right to a T, doesn't it?
I think so. I like that.
Oh, man. All right. Do you have anything you want to cover real quickly? We've only got a few seconds left in the show.
I don't think so. Keep your eye out on who is buying up property, housing, big businesses, because that's how you're going to find out what people on the news are really trying to convince you of.
Exactly. And, again, defund the police.
Yes.
Which it looks like the only way we're going to be able to do that is through a rewriting of the Grand Rapids City Charter.
And that's what they, are trying to convince us of. I'm not buying it. I think we need to dig in a little bit deeper and find out who is not doing their job.
Yeah.
Because I think there's other ways around that.
Yeah, the city attorney just came out at the meeting Tuesday night and said, oh, no, you can't do this until you get permission from the city manager to do this.
Well, and keep in mind, the city manager sits on the board of the right place.
Exactly.
The right place. That's with every single big business owner in town. So he is in their pocket.
Yep. That's going to wrap things up for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
For Jack Prince and Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.